Welcome to the Echo Essentials podcast.
I'm Dave Dale.
And I'm Scott Clark. I'm starting things off because I think I'm better at it than Dave is. Hi, Dave.
You're so much better than me.
Yeah, well, you know what? Half the battle's over once you can admit it. I haven't, so there's been, I'm seeing we're getting more and more feedback all the time.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. And we've got away from some of the environment stuff, which is all very, very important. But I think we've been in a good space, like leading the charge. A lot of people didn't know about PFAS and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And it's happening now. The nuclear waste, I'd seen some comments on that as well. Like, nuclear waste has been going through our area for a long time, right? Like, especially from Chalk River, right? I remember sitting through a presentation once with the Anishinaabe Nation, and there was these experts that came in from the Ottawa area that oppose what's going on. But they talk about it's such a highly top secret sensitive thing because it could be a disaster if something happened. Nobody knows when it's coming through our area or not. It's super, super secret, but it happens all the time. Like Chalk River's been around, since the 50s or something? I would think.
Oh, yeah.
It's been around forever. It's a massive nuclear research
My dad worked
spot.
there, one of his first jobs.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What was his vocation?
Well, he was a clerk. He was just coming out of, I guess they graduate in grade 9 or 10 at that time, and he was already working for about 5 years. But he became a clerk, accountant, and yeah, that was his first job.
Huh.
Yeah.
You traveled all, so was he an accountant throughout his life? Or?
Yeah, he was a field operations accountant. So he'd go to where the big jobs are to make sure that the sub-trades all got paid as well. And he'd make sure that, the money was going to the right spot and they were meeting their construction things. And
oh, so he wasn't, because you lived all over. You were living in the United States and
steel mills, ventilation shafts and for Falconbridge, yeah. Yeah,
I bet you back then that field accountant that you're saying had to literally be in the field to pay people.
Well, he'd be the bag man bringing dollars, Yankee dollars down to South America, so that he would go and pay the sub-trades directly so that the guys that were in charge of everything wouldn't just keep the money and shut down the job. Mm-hmm. He went to Indonesia, he went to Saudi Arabia, did all that. Where
do you think your passion for the most marginalized in communities comes from? I find that there's one thing I've learned about you, that you're very passionate about the most marginalized in the community. You're a tremendous advocate for people like that.
Well, tell you the truth, I kind of grew up in a circle of white people that were racist. Really, they like even my dad and those guys. They were fairly racist because they would always complain about couldn't keep dark people on the job, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was just. No, I didn't hate him
I
for
think
it.
many of us did of our age, right? We're the same age. I think because it was very, very white at one time, right?
So, you grew up watching Archie Bunker. Yeah. Like, you could see how wrong he was, right? And what the role that he portrayed. So you grew up in the 70s and you're all those shows, Jeffersons, all that kind of stuff. And you sort of see, well, what side of that equation do you want to be on?
Yeah.
And when I went to college, started meeting some First Nations people and making friends and seeing the other side and the impacts of racism. Mm-hmm. So it kind of came from there, I guess.
It's interesting. I've always found that because in some of the topics we've been touching on of late, it's really interesting that some of the feedback we're getting. And I'm really looking forward to this interview today because we've had the advocate for the homeless in here. We've had a city representative in here about, some of the challenges that they're facing. We had Mark King, the chair of DSAB, which last week you went to that meeting last week. How did that go down?
Well, I checked out the DSAB meeting that was getting feedback from the different groups regarding their lack of consultation or need for consultation about the homeless hub and where it's supposed to go.
Right.
So they were actually cleaning up the mess after the consultant they hired didn't consult with anybody.
What do you mean they didn't consult? That's their job. They had to have consult. Who did they consult with?
Everybody that was asked. Maggie Horsfield was going, well, were you ever contacted by this consultant? No. Chamber wasn't contacted. DIA wasn't contacted.
How could the DIA not be contacted?
They were not contacted.
That's ridiculous.
They ended up, I don't know, but it appears to me that the consultant just did a cookie cutter of what works. So yeah, you want to put a homeless hub near where everything is. Well, I don't know how much they paid for that.
Well, we could probably find out.
Yes, we could.
Yeah, we could probably find out.
But this was one of the only second times that they had a real public meeting for DSAB board, and they held it in the council. So there was a pretty good turnout.
Yeah. The media were all there, I think.
And the media were all there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was anything resolved?
Well, I think what was resolved is DSAB learned that they have to communicate better. And that was a major thing.
Yeah.
They haven't been communicating very well. And we had there was one presenter, Evan, who had worked at the warming center.
Yes.
And he talked about some of the real issues of, okay, are you going to staff a warming center? It doesn't really matter where it's going, but it does matter that there's issues. But more importantly, those people that are working there need to be better trained for first aid, not just basic first aid, because they're dealing with overdoses and life and death situations.
I bet.
They're traumatized without benefits for counseling.
Yeah.
They have no so DSAB and all these people are setting up something that is very traumatizing, and there's no real support system for the people having to do it. The security guards are having to do a little bit outside what normal security is. There was this guy said, okay, wherever you put it, make sure that they can go somewhere off, not on a sidewalk and visible to everybody for a smoke or a break or something like that. They need some place to wash themselves other than the bathroom, because they'd have to dedicate one person to stand out at the washroom and time people to make sure they weren't going in there to overdose. But that was the only place they had to clean up. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of little details operationally for a warming center, which leans towards and supports the idea of a well-organized, they're calling it a housing hub now, but it's not a housing hub, it's a homeless hub. But I think that the verb of, actually, this is a hub to try to get them housed, right? It's a bit of a spin.
I find it incredibly interesting that, the business owners of the downtown core, where the Chamber of Commerce also exists, right? That they have been, saying for a long time, we need some help. We need, what's going on here? And how they weren't consulted is incredible. If you just consult the homeless community on where they'd want it.
And they didn't ask them either.
What do you mean? Dude, how could I'm just assuming they just consulted the homeless population.
They didn't consult
that
anybody.
either.
No.
Stop it.
The consultant didn't consult.
How is that possible?
It's like a reporter not reporting.
Oh. So I know you're not working for a major journalism outlet, but are you sitting there going, oh, I want to ask a couple of questions here? Were you salivating?
Salivating.
Who would you like to ask, and what's the question you'd like to ask them after you heard that craziness? Mark King?
Well, Mark King's been the chair for 7 years.
Yeah. So what did Mark go,
oops?
Yeah, did he? Oops.
Well, this is how I have to check the timeline, but they recently got a new CEO, right?
Yeah. But this recently, in over a year or more.
Okay, but I think this consultant was hired either at the beginning or the end of the last one, and then there's a transition to a new one. And this may have just got sort of, here's a report. And they didn't have the wherewithal, or didn't just say, hold a sec, who did you consult with for this? And send it back, right? They didn't do that because maybe of this transition, but who else is on the board? Peter's there. Lana's there. Maggie's there. Justine's there. They're all on this board together. And Mark King.
And Mark King.
So it's a council thing.
Wow. And then outside.
I didn't hear a word from any of the other representatives for the DSAB in the meeting.
Well,
not one word. Not one question.
Well, it's because they're from other areas outside of North
I saw
Bay,
one
right?
guy sitting there like this. Like he didn't want to be there.
His head leaning back and having a nap. And
not good body language.
Not good body language. Well, I'm sure because North Bay is the monster of DSAB, that all these other outside communities that contribute to DSAB, that fund it. We're not talking about our issues. We're only talking about North Bay here. Come on.
And I would think that some of their people just come to North Bay for services and stay too. So they're part of that the homeless population here.
Our discussions, though, I'm hearing lots of really positive feedback on, that we're diving deeper and deeper. And I just received after hearing the Homeless Advocate podcast, I received a note from one of our listeners and viewers that said, you know what, you need to get the landlord of that Main East location. And I said, actually, we're going to get that person. That's this interview today. And it's and they, what was interesting about it was they said, and you need to stick it to him. And I thought, really interesting when you're saying we need to stick it to him when we haven't even heard what he has to say.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think he means ask credible, pointed questions. And that's what, and we did.
Yeah. This is where we're going to go. We're going to ask.
So we got Tricia Marshall, who's the president of the Near North Landlords Association.
Right.
And the vice president, Anthony Koziol, who is the owner of the villa that Bonnie Zufelt named in her recent media with the Bay Today. And she was there at the meeting for the DSAB meeting.
Oh, she was, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to talk to her.
They
and we were trying to get her in as well, but she wasn't available.
Yeah,
and she had a timing thing. She actually met with the police and others and has been assured that they're going to make, and they're taking steps to deal with the issue. So she wants to give them time to do things.
Mm-hmm.
But we want her in as well.
For sure. I'd like to hear, because everyone, it seems like, I'll say a buck is being passed.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying people won't take responsibility for the buck. It's like nobody knows where that buck needs to go.
Yeah.
Which includes this interview today.
Yeah.
It'll be like they're incredibly frustrated, but they only can do so much. And then the police will say the same. And, it goes on and on.
Several of the presenters, I think Donna Backer at the Chamber, Katie
Bevan
with the DIA, her father Tony Limina, who's with the Builders Block Group. They all made presentations, and I think Tony said it best. He said, "It's all of our responsibilities. We should be communicating and working together more."
Yeah,
and they haven't been. You know what it came out that he was physically threatened, assaulted as part of when the the warming center was down there, because the place that they would go, for the low barrier shelter, they'd have to leave the warming center at 8. And if they hadn't already checked in and waited an hour to get their bed at the low barrier shelter, they had nowhere to go. So the workers there were having to kick people out at 8 o'clock. They didn't have anywhere to go. They felt bad about that, of course. They would actually go and sleep on the ramp to his underground garage because it was heated to keep the snow off. So in the mornings, people that were arriving for business couldn't because there's people laying in the way. So he had to hire security and call the cops to try to clear the bodies out.
Really?
Yeah, we just don't understand exactly the impacts of what happens when you put it somewhere and nobody's taking a look at the impacts.
And hearing the homeless advocate is Shane, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Shane. And I've said this to a few people. I said, I learned so much. It's like the vicious cycle of it all. When you don't have credit, when you're coming out, when there isn't a place for you to go, when you leave incarceration, like it's a vicious cycle. Like I shouldn't say you can't. It's very difficult to break it.
Mm-hmm.
On everybody that we interview, the one thing I'm excited about, I think there's someone that's going to be able to, come into a situation like this and say, hey, let's try this. And
I think Tricia sort of pointed to that as a possible, and everybody understands the suggestion is housing first, wraparound services to help them. Don't let them fall through the cracks again.
Mm-hmm.
Because who has to deal with it all? Landlords.
So let's get to this interview.
Yeah.
And Tricia and Anthony are here, and I think it's really informative of their situation that they're dealing with now. and those that are actually providing housing to the most marginalized in our community, and how challenging that can be. So let's get to it.
Founded in 1968, Voyageur Aviation is a proud member of our community, providing worldwide aviation services from our headquarters right here in North Bay. If you're looking for a challenge, change, or want to expand your current career in aviation, Voyageur is hiring for a wide range of technical and non-technical roles, including pilots, aircraft maintenance personnel, corporate administration, machinists, supply chain professionals, and more. Be part of a workforce that is over 400 strong, supporting humanitarian, government, defense, and civil aviation operations around the world. For a career in aviation and beyond, learn more about open positions and career paths at voyav.com.
We have a doozy today. We're going to be talking to the president and vice president of the Near North Landlords Association, Tricia Marshall, and Anthony Koziol. Welcome to the podcast.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
You've been in the news.
Yeah, I have.
I'm not going to start with you.
Good.
I know you're just bubbling up.
Yeah.
But Tricia, I just want to ask you to sort of give us a lay of the land of where we're sitting as far as what landlords think about the particular rules we have and the tribunal in dealing with them. Because I know that's the root of a lot of the problems.
Yes, it is. I mean, the Residential Tenancies Act it's like a highway traffic act, for us drivers. This is the same for landlords and tenants. Mm-hmm. And although it's very clear, it's relatively balanced, not balanced, but I would say fair to certain parts. But I think the biggest issue that we have whenever we do have a problem is actually there's several. One of the biggest things is actually taking it to a landlord and tenant board, which is a tribunal system. And it could take upwards of a year, even more, for an actual hearing. And if it's clear cut, usually you can get some sort of satisfaction if everything is done properly, and you can, if it's something like someone's not paying rent. But there's a lot more complicated matters with folks that are in our properties, and then it gets very complicated and it can go on for years. I have one that's been sitting in the tribunal hopper since October 2021, and we've had one hearing just to say, oh, we don't have enough time. And I've had another one that's like, we did a mediation and I mean, it'll just keep going back and forth because it's a complicated matter. So that's the one big thing. And then the other thing is when a hearing is actually heard, I think this is one that bothers the most of us, is that an adjudicator, even though there's a Residential Tenancies Act that actually clearly lays out the lay of the land and how we operate our business. But then 1/3 of this, it gives the free rein to the adjudicator to squash all the rules that were put in the act. I know, it's really a bizarre sort of system. So I liken it as being very dysfunctional.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I've always wanted to know about I've always wanted to invest in some property, and then I've heard these stories where it's like, well, you get a tenant in there, here's what happens, been sued, all these things. But also, you hear on the other side too, you hear tenants saying, oh, landlords, and I think many of us probably as we started coming up, we've all been tenants at one time before, we were able to invest in our own properties. But it seems like there's like this divide, this black and white that landlords are like this and tenants are like this. And is the majority of the people that own property and rent them, and the majority of the people who rent property, is the majority like it's all roses, like everything's really quite good? Are we only talking about the fringe?
It's an excellent question, and I would agree that that's exactly what it is. For the majority of landlords and tenants, everything is just cool. Everything works as a great arrangement, business transaction. Then you've got that little bit on the edge, and I mean, I get calls probably about 5 or 6 now a week. It used to be 5 or 6 a day. People calling thinking that I was the landlord tenant board because they, Google it. And I would get tenants. And I mean, I'd hear these stories. And it's like, and I hear also from the landlords. So it's like there are just a small amount. But also, too, when you start asking questions and start talking about the situation, then it starts to become clearer. People are emotionally are telling
there's
stories.
A lot of depth to the reasons why. And it's all fundamentally based on human behavior, right? It's human beings reacting to protect something or another. And I just to echo what you asked him about the vast majority of my tenants are great tenants. But coming back to what you're reflecting, my great story about that one is not don't talk to me about what we're experiencing. Talk about what people are saying out on the street. So I run into people 25, 30 years ago, I'd be running into somebody like you saying, hey, I'm thinking of investing $100,000. What should I do? Yeah, okay, sure. LTB is working reasonably well. It's not bad. But now I'm running into people and they go and, find out that I'm a landlord, and all of them have this absolute visceral reaction. And Tech with the individuals like yourself, sitting there saying, yeah, I could never be a landlord because of whatever stories they've heard, experienced themselves directly. Even the front lines now that we're working with, the police officers, the social, well, I'm going to call them the social workers out of some of the agencies, they're all sitting there saying, yeah, we couldn't be a landlord with the way things are.
So, and when we say this, and we're going to talk about many different things here, but that's actually part of the problem. So if people aren't investing in properties to go through the, then you don't have people investing in it. And that if they're not investing in it, you don't have as many rental properties. Like, it's
100%.
The cycle just continues.
And just remember, too, we're representing, and we are the small, medium landlords. We're not the big corporations that you see.
Yeah.
We have, it's a little different. We're attached. We're there all the time. We're working with the folks, where a lot of those other ones are, they're all the different agencies and et cetera doing retirement funds, and it's all through, what do you call it?
Mom and pop operators.
Well, that's what we are.
Yeah.
But
Well,
what
hedge funds and everything, and hedge funds and that sort of thing.
Those are totally
big money.
different.
Like Tricia's portfolio is a bit different from mine. I've got 10, 12 plex walk-ups as they're known, and they make up work. I guess you could call it the professional market sort of thing. But I guesstimate, and I did ask the question of somebody inside DSAB once. How much is in the mom and pop operator size of, the 1-2 unit sort of thing, the one house with, 5 students in it. And they make up a huge percentage of the population of our industry. And that's where the expansion comes from. I can't go and sit there, take my 12-plex and economically go and say, oh, let's put a third floor on. Right? The expansion has to come from somebody taking, a space like yours. What was your space here way back when? Taking it, converting it like they're taking, like they're taking schools and converting it, sort of thing. It's that sort of investment that is required by the private sector to, that's a tight statement. Really, depending on who you talk to, everybody's saying the government should be doing all the investing in creating the housing supply. But at the moment, let's just say it's not there. And right now it's the private sector that we've been asked, both Trish and I.
And then to your point, both your point that you were making with to Scott and Dave was that a lot of people are that do have a little bit of a retirement funds to put into a housing or to do the investment are a little bit fearful now of doing it. So that we've created a bit of a storm here now because, it used to be a good thing and we had people investing and, taking they don't have a pension fund, so they have to invest their money. And this was one way to be able to reinvest into something, into the community and then help themselves. But it's too scary to go to do that now, and there's less and less people that are willing to do that, and they'd rather do something else. So that has also contributed to the problem, in a big way.
Yeah.
And as more and more landlords, we have seen a huge transition of landlords in our community that have retired, sold off, and that new landlord is coming from out of town. And that also adds another element of challenge.
And we might be able to touch upon, the economics of it all, but a simple one, you brought up, the excellent point, the bigger buildings are owned by, the hedge fund sort of thing. And the pension funds, for example, the public sector pension funds, they invest in real estate too. As I said to a room full of people from the various agencies, I said, what's the difference between you guys and me? I said, about 2 points. Because their pension fund has gone and invested in AAA of commercial real estate. They're saying, okay, we're going to take the 5 points and live happily ever after. Any of us investing in our properties, we're sitting there trying to get 7% rate of return. Contrary to public opinion from some sectors, we're not massive profiteering, scum-sucking landlords. We're just people trying to, instead of going and risking it in the stock market and maybe making 7 or 8 or 9 or 10%, we're saying, okay, let's take this property, invest it, and get a 7% cap rate.
Right.
And when you have situations that go sideways, that 7% just gets eliminated like that.
Right.
Sort of deal. But we can get into that later.
No, it makes total sense to me. Like, because my investments, my hope is getting 7 points back. So you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But so let's talk a little bit about. Can we talk about the property in specific that you've been that we talked about Main Street East?
Sure.
And you've taken a lot of heat for that.
Yes.
But when we reached out to you and asked, and Dave reached out to you and said, hey, tell us a little bit about that property and tell us about, where people of highly complex challenge with many people involved, how difficult it is to unwind something like that.
Do we have enough time in this podcast?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Where to approach it from?
Well, let's start with the fact that what do you do when you have a problem tenant like that who is doing criminal activity, or there's criminal activity happening and alleged, and you want to, what choices do you have? What options do you have to deal with a person like that?
There's many. Yeah, how to put it? I mean, I don't know which way to come at it from. So
can I just say, here's my perception because I'm not a landlord.
Okay, that's a great way of putting it. Let's take John Q. Public's perception of what's going on down there.
Like, I have a property where I'm renting out to a bunch of people, and then it turns out there's drug dealing going on. Well, I'm going to call police, get them removed. They're out. I'll clean the place out. I'll get a new tenant in. It's pretty simple, Tony.
Thank you for that great start on it, because that's
what I think.
But that is a great way of synopsizing what John Q. Public thinks. In today's society, especially brought on by the rapidity of how we can exist, with social media, we have this instant gratification attitude about us that, we think that solutions are immediately there because, you and I and all of us in this room, when we go and, break a law, we're sitting there going, I just, broke the law. And we're talking about running a stop sign, right? And, that's our value system going and judging what we've gone and done. But for starters, we have to be empathetic to these individuals and understand that their value system is radically different from ours, and going and sitting there and doing everything that they're doing and offending our sensibilities is just irrelevant to them, right? That's them, right? And so when we go and take a look at the illegal and illegal activity, I've had discussions with tenants too. Tenants sit there and have the impression that, well, I saw them going and smoking, crack sort of thing. Or in another building, they're in the stairwell and, Well, can't you just call the police and get them arrested? No, and thank you for the long-form podcast, because those details just don't come to resolution in a lot of media outlets. The national media has gone and done a great job of going and talking about some of the intricate issues involving, well, we'll call it homelessness quickly. But, their articles
mental health and addictions.
Mental health and addictions. There's great pieces written, but they're all behind paywalls. So how's John Q. Public going to go and know anything? And coming back to the local media, what can they possibly do? And then on top of it all, we're talking about the patience level of John Q. Public wanting to try and inform themselves. They're busy sitting there trying to make ends meet. They're trying to go and, take kids to Tim Hortons soccer right now because it's summertime. In the winter, it's hockey. To everybody that will be listening to this, kudos to you for wanting to try and understand, but please go and share, hit the, like button and go share and try and inform everybody around you that this is everything that we're talking about here is horrendously complex. And I think one of the comments that was in the 2 Days podcast with Brent, Brent's analogy of from an elder about takes you 10 days to get in a bush, 10 days to walk out. This has been decades in the making. And you can go and piece back, you can backstep, where it all sort of kind of came from. But to go forward on it is complex. And, to talk about, coming back to, we want to go and arrest somebody for illegal activity. We sit there and we think, we have the impression because we've been watching too much CSI. Oh, yeah, we solved the case in 45 seconds and boom, they're arrested. Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. I mean, I've spent hours and hours with the
some of the ways
police.
It doesn't work is that, and you can enlighten me a little bit on this, but yeah, you can call somebody and report criminal activity or disturbing activity or whatever. But once in the justice system, there's layers and layers of reasons why they can't actually help that person or hold them back from what they're doing, and they're out to do it again, right?
Yeah, on top of it all. I mean, that's, the fourth or fifth step. The first step of trying to stop the criminal activity. We've got a thing called our Constitution, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Because we have that charter, the police cannot go and walk up to somebody and say, hey, I just, saw you going, we think it was drugs that you were going and doing. They can't go and sit there, stop them, search them. It's impossible. You talk to the police about trying to go and, down on Main Street East, I've got the tenant himself is one thing, but he goes and once again brings after, having gone and thrown out the other person from 6 weeks ago, he's brought in a new friend now that's dealing drugs. The police know about it, but, this person is small fry for them. They're sitting there trying to get the gangbangers with the guns. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to sit there and curtail it from the policing perspective, because that's what you hear often. The police should be doing something. The police can't do everything that everybody wants them to do.
They have to budget their resources.
And that's exactly it. Sure, if we had, for argument's sake, 10 times the police force, even 3 times the police force. I mean, people have to understand, we're a community of 50-odd thousand people. There's hundreds of these situations individually or en masse, and your afternoon platoon, your evening platoon is made up of 6 to maybe 8 officers, plus 3 working street crime that are dealing with the drug dealers. And the amount of work it takes to be able to successfully prosecute any drug dealing case is immense. To heck with the murders that have gone and happened. That's resources again, too. And so that instant gratification just is not so easily available from the other front line. So now the onus is on me.
North Bay Echo is proud to partner with Twigs Coffee Roasters, a part of the community since 1995. Twigs offers a wide selection of quality beans, fresh roasted in-house every day. Find your favorite specialty drinks at our espresso bar. Rejuvenate with freshly squeezed juice or treat yourself to mouth-watering selections from our gourmet deli. And don't forget our irresistible fresh baked goods, including uncompromising gluten-free options. Twigs has 5 locations to serve you from North Bay to Sturgeon Falls to Sudbury. Order online for pickup at twigs.ca. And coming soon, you'll be able to order fresh roasted coffee beans direct to your doorstep from our distribution center in North Bay.
When I said when I made the statement earlier on, it's like, okay, there's drug dealing going on, have them removed and get a new tenant and life. But the flaw in my comment also that I'm learning through this process when we're having discussions is, okay, let's say if that's the case and the person is removed, then where does that person go? Right? It's the cyclical nature of everything. That person, let's say that person goes to prison.
Yeah.
And they spend some time there. When they get back out again, where do they go? Like there's
there's a system. There's a streaming process. There's I forgot the name of it. Trish might know it better, but there's a stream that comes for trying to place people in housing. There's one that comes from the hospitals,
the jail system.
And there's one from the jail system.
They're really working at this now because of the homelessness issues.
Mm-hmm. And that's what they're finding. It's like, the jail system has called me up and said, hey, you want to go and take somebody? Well, that's another whole thread that we can reach into about, how individuals are protected by the Human Rights Code in Ontario.
Right.
From our perspective. But just to finish off, finally, maybe, the point about, what tools are available for me, what paths are available for me. So the LTB has always had a really high threshold of evidence to go and meet. When I say high, I mean, sure, it's even higher if you were a police officer, the justice system. I at least just have to take a raid document, in other words, a search warrant, and a media article about the situation. I can take that to the LTB and say, hey, this happened. I want to go and get rid of this person. See you in 1 year.
So in our avenue to deal with the situation that Tony has, or any of us have.
Well, you had another one a few weeks ago.
Yeah. So anytime we have a situation with a tenant that is doing something illegal, our only recourse outside of calling the police ourselves to have help is to go through the landlord-tenant board, which will be another year from now.
Wow. If you're lucky.
Yeah.
And then coming back to the threshold, if I had a raid, then, based on all the reading that I've done, talking to the, legal eagle sort of thing, then I should have a successful case. But then, now there's a few caveats where this can just sort of break down even a bit further to success or non-success. So let's say the tenant in question wasn't doing it, and this one person is the one person that the friend is arrested and tossed out. But now, in the last 6 months, or last year since I've, been in there,
Stop pounding the table.
Stop pounding the table.
We can hear that.
Good thing we're not in earphones. The system will sit there, the LTB, and just a sidebar, and Trish can, I think, especially articulate this because she's been interfacing a lot with, well, we'll call it with the LTB. Like they've been having seminars and stuff like that. Their MO now, especially because of the homeless situation, is that you are especially now going to really have to prove to me that this person deserves to be thrown out. So if we're talking about a tenant versus a guest, then you can take the guest and have him removed by the system, or they've gone and moved on, and I'm taking the tenant to court, to the LTB now, and the tenant just sits there and says, well, the person is no longer there. I'm not throwing the tenant out, but then as soon as the hearing is over, boom, next day, drug dealer can come back.
Wow. So
now, unless, now in my particular case, there is maybe enough there, and I have to go to an important part because, we're talking about a hypothetically perfect situation where we've got the police having gone and done a raid. Well, what's left for me? What is left for me to go and prove that there's drug dealing going on? Well, I bought myself a new full-time job, well, at least it was for a while there, especially after we installed it. It was getting really busy. We put cameras in all of our places. We spent tens of thousands of dollars trying to put all that in. Well, the police were always calling me up and say, hey, Tony, can we look at this? Tony, can we look at that? Like I was spending money on the employees going out. I spent hours on, weekdays, weeknights, weekends, dealing with various situations and, trying to gather evidence. So I've got, camera where, okay, I'm now gathering evidence, and I have some significantly booked of this person is a frequent flyer of having a drug dealer there. Okay. I can take just in of itself, like just remember, I'm just taking now just this information. I'm taking this video to the LTB, and I can present it and say, well, I think that this person is dealing drugs. And the, what do they call that? The public, not the, no, but the public, the
Adjudicator?
No, not the adjudicator. The
Public defenders?
public defenders.
So you're talking about
the public defenders.
legal aid.
They have public defenders available to them that will sit there and help them go and fight it, and sit there and say back to the adjudicator, well, Mr. Chair, Mrs. Chair, this is his opinion.
It's not fact, or
It's not fact,
it
right?
hasn't been proven.
Yeah, even though to all of us here, it's like, yeah, okay, there goes a unique person, knocks on the door, walks out 1 minute later, walks out. Next person, 2 minutes later, different person.
So let me ask you this. So why, I was about to say something.
It's okay, I got big shoulders.
I know. No, I know you do. I've known you for a long time, Tony. It's more, okay, someone says, well, stop renting to, I'll use quotes, those people, Tony. Stop renting to those people.
Yeah, why don't you?
You're chronic.
Yeah, why don't you jack up your rates?
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's go there. Yeah. I'd be happy to go there. So yes, I am guilty of numerous things. I am guilty of pursuing a business model that is detrimental to my, and especially that property. I am pursuing a business model that is detrimental to my long-term financial health. How so?
And mental health.
And mental health, right? As, Lana Mitchell, for example, goes and says, she basically looks at me and says, you're like an idiot, right?
Don't worry, she says that about me too.
So I'm guilty, for example, of going and accepting phone calls from the crisis center and taking in individuals basically sight unseen. I know fully well, based on, years of experience, years of bringing them in, that these people are in crisis for a reason. They're in crisis because they have mental health issues. They were maybe suffering from substance misuse issues. And, right now they're on the wagon, so to speak. And, the criminal element. Well, okay, somebody please define criminal for me. From my experience having talked to these individuals, we literally live the front lines. I mean, I know all my tenants by first name. I hear their stories. I talk to them. I treat them as human beings. And, if I may just pay homage quickly to my father, he told me, I'm second generation in this business. My father told me when I was I was going and saying something negative about some panhandler down on Yonge Street when we were down there doing the CNE like 45 years ago, sort of thing. And he looks at me and he says, remember, they're still a human being, right? They might be a bum, but they're still a human being. And I've taken that to heart in a lot of my situations. So yes, detrimentally to my existence, I'm sitting here and willing and able to go and take in also criminals. Well, they're also criminals because people with mental health issues have gone and assaulted somebody. That's technically a criminal. People that have gone and, just been, suffering from substance misuse, they might actually have already a conviction for substance misuse. Technically, they're a criminal. So yes, I'm guilty of renting to them, for starters. And then on top of it all, I am guilty of renting to them at a rate that is far below market rent. So right now, give or take, the CMHC's official market average rent for bachelor apartments in the city of North Bay is $1,000. I am going and renting these units, give or take, at about $575 to $600 per head. Why am I doing so? because I think it's unfair for me as a citizen to go and say to this person that is maybe making $1,300 a month if they're on ODSP. Welfare is like half of that.
Mm-hmm.
A person that's making $1,300 on ODSP, going to them and saying, okay, give me $1,000 and I'm leaving you $300 for your clothes, food, smokes, and stuff like that. I'm trying to leave money in their pocket, and I'm doubly, when I say doubly penalized, yet on this particular property, I am going and paying a tax rate that is based on, like property taxes are based on income. My property taxes are at the level of renting it at $1,000 a month. So between, just that immediate thing, but my gross margin on this property, if I were to chart it for you, would be sitting there and decreasing. But I'm trying to sit there and help the problem. I could easily sit there. Yeah, you're right. Eventually, with time especially with the broken LTB system, I could go and sit there and get rid of any slight little problem like other landlords do. Well, okay, great. They're homeless. They're being kicked down the road someplace. Where are they going to be? So right now, just to add a bit more resolution to, taking care of the homeless, yeah, I've got a bunch of individual tenants, great tenants. They're living alone. But some of them, we'll call it the more difficult ones, well, one of the things that wasn't, and I don't even know if the system will say knows this. I mean, I'm sure they have to know this because I've gone and told enough people, at the front lines at least, but I don't know if the Brent Konolowskis, I think Brent would know. Brent has been there, but, let's say the counselors, do they know that right now, because of what some of my tenants do, there's less of a homeless problem? You've heard of the term couch surfing. Yeah. Sure, you're a student, you're going down to a friend's, you're couch surfing. Well, some of my tenants, they're living in down, especially let's say on that property, they're sitting there in a room that's about this size, and they're going and putting a roof, providing a toilet, providing a shower to like 3, 4, 5 other people. So when we, talk about hitting, the front lines and sitting there and going and trying to help people, that in that discussion, I didn't hear them talking about the people, literally in my circumstance between the various units, I've got probably at least a couple dozen people, give or take, being housed with a roof over their head because these people have been willing to go and take in their kind sort of thing and put a roof over their head.
Your neighbors.
Yes.
Say your neighbors, your neighbor. Who should they be directing their frustration at? Because I think some of the frustration comes pretty pointed at you.
Oh, yeah, it does. No, and listen, I 100% appreciate it. But my question that I have, not just for my neighbors, you guys touched upon it in your podcast with Brent. The big elephant in the room, the one that society is literally scared crapless of really trying to address, because it is an uncomfortable thing. Like, even some of the people that came down, during that visit from City Hall a couple of weeks ago, they're rather uncomfortable. But that's only because they're not working the front lines like we are. We can walk amongst these people. We know they're human beings. Thankfully, okay, we're not in an we're not in anarchy here. We're, Wild West where, things are, suddenly just, I don't like you, boom, sort of thing, right? Thankfully, we're not there. But the NIMBY-ism that we have in our society, yes, voters are willing and able to go and sit there and plunk down more tax dollars and go and vote for the solutions to it all. But don't put the solution beside me. Right? The NIMBY-ism. And you guys, like I said, you really touched upon it. And, the homeless hub, I think it's called. Mm-hmm. Good luck sitting there, especially the downtown is, we'll say the focus of a lot of the problems right now, the homeless encampments that are, hidden in the bush right now and maybe only occasionally disturbing, some person because they're walking along and, frankly, enough of them are going and stealing this and that, or at least taking the garbage and recycling sort of thing. we have to have that adult discussion. We have to sit down as a community and talk about it. And, this is in that podcast was really, I'm going to say, almost the first time that was it. All what I've seen, basically, correct me if I'm wrong. But by the way, a lot of things I might be saying, smoking crack, as I sometimes like to say, too, sort of deal. The public needs to know better what the complexities are of the situations that we're all confronted with. Not sit there and immediately go and judge, oh yeah, they're this and that. I says, yeah, they are, but even as a great question that was asked is, okay, so you see the person that's, as it's called, doing the nod, the toothless wonders sometimes as they're referred to down on Main Street. Are they still helpable? Absolutely, they're human beings. They can still be helped, but we have to understand what ails them better to go and change the way we're doing things. And that's, another 3 threads.
So just to sort of summarize to the point we got here, we got a broken system where human rights are conflicting with the economics that are in short supply. People don't want to get into the small and medium landlord business because they don't have the overhead, lawyers, and budget to deal with it, with a system that takes a year to solve an issue. And then when you do, if you do, that person needs to go somewhere, and there's nowhere to go because there's no landlords that want to get into the business. Government got out of supporting government housing, so they haven't done their job there. And the police are understaffed for the issues they have to face. So they have to budget their resources and what they do, so it's ineffective in a lot of areas that bother people. But that's the things that bother people are right in front of them. As long as it's not right in front of them, they don't care. And we just move things around. We know it's whack-a-mole. It's all whack-a-mole. And we know today, I was actually spent some time on the phone with Shane Moyer and some others who were hired to clean out an encampment not too far where they're actually looking at putting the homeless up. And there's another encampment with 40 people. And there's possibilities of them getting their act together for a protest and taking over one of the beaches in town. So the issue's not being solved. It's being moved around. And as long as it's moved around out of somewhere that...
out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind, right? And of course...
Yeah, let me pay my taxes and we're all good.
Yeah.
Right?
As long as I don't have to step over any bodies. Yeah. I was going into Twigs to meet with somebody for a coffee, and when I pulled up in that little spot where you go through the drive-thru, but there's a couple of parking spots, there was about 7 people of exactly of who we're talking about. Obvious mental health issues, obvious addiction issues, obvious poverty issues. And they're in a group. And their big discussion was, how do we get in there to go to the bathroom? Because they have a code now. Because they've been bothered with so many people going in there and having problems in the bathrooms. You don't want to have anybody by themselves in the bathroom. And then you got a different issue, right? So they have a system there trying not to be the bathroom place down there. So I go into the lineup to get a coffee, and one would come in and walk and hold the door open for the other, and then they would try to go and catch the bathroom before it was locked again. Yeah. And one guy that looked so sad watching him, because he's obviously dealing with a lot more than we are here. He walked in, he kept his eyes off. He was trying not to be a bother. He just wanted to use the washroom, but he went in and it was already locked. So then I see him walk back out, and he's like, they're just looking for a place to wash. And that I was listening to him talk, and they're trying to strategize of where they can go. We're not dealing with the issue very well, and it's a very big picture. I don't. Do you have any ideas for this to be solved better? What would you think need to be done? Tricia?
This lady especially, I'm working the front lines in a sense more than she does. She's got, for the most part, better clientele, but she is very immersed.
What is your insight in something that can be done in the short term, say, that would alleviate the situation for different areas?
I think the biggest thing, first thing that has to happen is we have to have everybody. Actually, this is such a complicated question, and it's like it's daunting to even talk about it. But I just want. I'll just back up a little bit and kind of give you a little bit of what I'm doing. I'm doing as far as I'm working with groups. Oh, I thought you were trying to stop me for a second. So I am also on the community advisory board at the city, and then I'm also a part of a smaller team that is built for zero. So it's to not eradicate, but functional zero homelessness. So I'm giving a different perspective, right, as a private landlord. But I'm working with all these agencies that are overworked, overwhelmed, funded. And we're also working with DSAB, who also, too, has some challenges, with the funding, et cetera. But one of the things, and they've all been working at trying to solve this problem every month. I think for the last 4 years have been sitting, or 5 years have been sitting, going to these meetings once a month. And everybody's heart's into it. It's all in the right place. And it's just so complicated. And if somebody asks, how could you solve a problem? Just by observing, because I listen more than I offer, right? Because it's like I have little to offer other than I'm a community person. So I give the Tom down the street or Nancy up the hill, that kind of perspective, somebody who's not into that business. And what I've noticed is that all this time we've been talking, and there's never been any definitive solution. Like everybody's got ideas, they put it into action, and then the next thing, there's just not enough traction. So one of the projects that we're working on that I don't know, I don't want to say too much, but what it is there's 211 that's available right now, but we would like to get it streamlined more for community access, like a triage housing, so help with the crisis center and kind of keeping that inventory. I mean, they already do all this, but what it is it's the point of contact would be just much more easier, because through 211 service is all it is just a vehicle to get to help. So if someone's homeless, they can either do a cell phone or they can just do a chat. They can do text. They can do a phone call. And at the other end, when it's deemed to be something that is like mental health or addictions, housing, there's people at the other end that are qualified folks, social workers that are at the other end. They're maybe based in Southern Ontario, but they've got all the information garnered from us to be able to help assist people through the system, navigate. And then they also update information in the systems. Are you familiar with HIFIS?
No.
It's a data for individuals.
Yeah, it's created by the federal government in 2018.
So this is something that we're working on, but there's a cost. And while we're working at this, this group of individuals, we don't have a budget. We don't have a dollar because we're not putting money into it. We're putting our resources, our time, our energy. So what we need to do is we need to get DSAB to commit, and not just a one-time, because this has to be sustainable. It has to be an ongoing thing. And that's something that we have to have a conversation. And as a matter of fact, we should be having that kind of discussion this week.
This is being recorded July 23rd, Tuesday, and tomorrow there's a DSAB meeting where they're going to have presentations about what they're trying to do with this. I haven't even heard about it until yesterday, but I'm going to try to make it.
Too bad we don't. I don't know, because it's only public figures, so people that are elected in our municipalities around in our Nipissing region, right? These are elected individuals.
Yeah.
So,
no, I was told that people can observe it because it's a public meeting, but you can't make a presentation, talk, or anything like that. But these are that's I have to look for more information about it. But we're all interested in finding, okay, what are you doing and how can you help, or what do you need from people, because everybody wants to help solve this issue, or they want to see it solved. But like you say, it's very complex, and there's a lot of different agencies involved, and everybody's looking at what they're doing. You didn't hear about this?
The meeting for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think there's a meeting tomorrow, special meeting.
I didn't know.
Well, we'll have more information on this before this podcast goes up, because this won't go up until a week from this Thursday now. All right, so we're a week behind. But it'd be very interesting. I'll add some more information in the newsletter about whatever comes out of that meeting.
I'd be curious to see the numbers, the total global budget. Like, what are we doing? Where have we come from? Where is it being spent? Do we maybe need to take a hard look at that and reallocate? But that's another whole thing. But just as I call it, the nuts and bolts of the situations that we as owners confront, and really the heart to house that we've got in our society. Coming back to my property, it's not like the police didn't know everything that's going on. I mean, they know literally, yeah, we know he's in there, we know she's in there, we know he's in there, we know that, this and this is sort of happening. It's not like the police couldn't have, let's say, I'm not trying to blame them for anything, but it's not like, I'm going to say maybe more generically, it's not like the system didn't know that the situations down there existed. And it's not like the system couldn't have maybe gone and interfaced with some of these individuals that were, especially the more transient types. I mean, the system, the way the program in general that we're sitting here trying to achieve success with is to go and give them stable housing. I got the phone call 3 weeks ago saying, oh, we're going to come down to your property. But that's the first phone call I got sort of about my property. I didn't have anybody inside the system go and say, hey, Tony, listen, you've got a bunch of situations down there. What can you tell us about it? Give us some insight. Tell us, heck with asking about my building. No, speaking of, sending the wrong message to the industry. Well, yeah, don't screw up, because otherwise you're going to have basically the equivalent of, because I had 4 police officers down there. They're just, really only 2 I think were needed, but, they're the escorts to go and protect the city staff. I wish I could get that, sort of thing when I'm trying to deal with the same clients sort of thing. So, the first phone call from inside City Hall was, oh, we're coming down to go and check your building, because somehow well, they could have gone and asked me. I don't lie about these things. I might have maybe missed this or that, and technically, yeah, the deficiencies were found. Yeah, so here's a hole in the wall where a conduit goes through, and you see the crack around it. Well, that's technically a deficiency. My worst deficiency down there was that I have a unit that has a very hard to house person, if I want to try and throw a name at the situation. And because of her underlying mental health and drug addiction issues, that door isn't closing properly. I mean, we're talking a steel door and a steel frame. That was my biggest transgression that I was responsible for. And 2 or 3 other tenants were responsible for pulling down their smoke detectors, and they got provincial offenses fines. And that's it. By the way, that's toilet paper.
The tenant did, not you?
Not me.
Well,
no.
I'll be darned, you're the first to hear that.
Yeah. So it's not like the system couldn't come down, but the reason I think the system couldn't come down is, well, for starters, there's hardly anybody. I think there's the 2 programs that you guys mentioned in your other podcast. Basically, the downtown 2 people, the one security person and a sort of like a mobile crisis worker. And I really, before I leave this podcast, there's a really, really important point I need to make, coming sort of full circle back to the beginning about John Q's impression
because we do have to wrap it up.
of what's going on. So the system just doesn't have enough boots on the ground to go and sit there and engage these people. And on top of it all, they're working 8 to 5.
Yeah.
Well,
To
actually,
a degree.
that's, yeah.
I mean, but at least
True
this
South
this
is
program.
an outreach program,
Yeah.
and they are out there all the time.
24/7 is what's needed, and my property, has them. But if I, we have to wrap it up. But an important thing that I think the public needs to understand is they get the impression from politicians, oh, we're throwing money at it, and it should theoretically be solved. But as the president of the Chamber of Commerce, I think more so indirectly, went and sort of talked about, the situation that we're all confronting here, is and solutioning. I mean, yes, money is needed, roofs are needed. Our industry needs to be maybe respected a bit more. But what am I really talking about are legislative changes. Who is ultimately responsible? In my mind, I think it's really the province. The province should sit there, turn around and say, yep, your 76 agencies, committees, and your 148 programs. Yes, a lot of them are ancillary. They're like the dental program at the health unit sort of thing. We need to go and rejig this, and we need to go and rejig our legislative approach to it, because if somebody goes and reads Bay Today and sees the article that says that our MPP went and announced $150,000 to go and support the mobile crisis team, you read the whole article, and the mobile crisis team is out there interfacing with people. But aside the sort of, I think they work 8 to 8 sort of shift sort of thing. Everybody thinks like, oh yeah, something illegal has happened. Let's go down there. Boom, nab them, right? We saw it happen. Summary justice is what it's sometimes referred to as. Oh, this person is in crisis. They should be able to go to the psych hospital, take them away and, put them in and help them. No, I've had grandmothers crying, trying to get help for their paranoid schizophrenic grandkid that is living in my building. This person, without getting into particulars, well deserved to be put into the psych facility. This person is living out on the streets, barefoot, trying to get into twigs to go to the bathroom sort of thing. And somehow we a long time ago decided, okay, let's tear down the psych hospital and, get rid of the lavender colored brick rooms and instead let them go and be out on the street. Now, theoretically, the low barrier shelter and facilities like that are supposed to be the infill on it, but I guess you could say it can't happen often enough. But still, the one key step that is missing, and I want everybody to, go and do their homework on this one and try and understand it, is legislatively, we cannot go and force anybody to go and do anything.
Can I just say something too? It's like just to kind of
wrap it all up.
Yeah, truly, all we're doing is talking about the symptoms. There's a problem. It keeps growing. It's never going to end, and we keep looking at the back end instead of looking how do we stop the flow, the inflow. Something has to change. We hear psychiatrists that are telling families, let your kids or your husband, wife, let them hit rock bottom, homelessness, in order to get the help. So they're telling people to let people go. Jail systems were, and now they're starting to really help work with the people on our community. But hospitals too used to be let them find, take a taxi out off the premises and then just go somewhere. But what we need to do is we need to stop the inflow of having folks that need help. Instead of, we still have to work on trying to find something that's humane and healthy for them to live and to survive. But there's some people that you just will not be able to help, and we have to recognize that too. But there are some that we can, and those are the ones that you have to grab at.
Yeah, or
but
try
we
to
need
grab at.
Keep that inflow stopping. So if that's through fighting to get more help, more money too for some of the folks that are just, it's not, because money is also a very precarious place too, right?
I think the vast majority of the people that we're seeing, the walking wounded, want help. But we have to appreciate that there's some that are just going to sit there and say no.
There's a program in Finland that has eradicated homelessness, and it's called Home First. But the government, everybody, every single level of government and the community has bought into it to make it work. And what they do is they house someone first, then work on the addictions. There's a hub that's working with them all the time. Some will never accept, but will get measured. And let's say it's an alcoholic, will get measured, poison in order to continue to survive and just, But what happens is the buildings whenever a building comes available, the different levels of government will, if it's suitable, they'll do a retrofit, say, commercial space and make it apartments and units. And what will happen is it doesn't matter. It's even in the highest, like the most affluent neighborhoods to the downtown core. It's all over. And everybody in the community accepts it. There's crime levels have gone down. All sorts. It's like so many different things. They've found the solution. But it's not going to happen overnight. It worked over a long period of time, and we all have to work together.
And the willpower to implement that. And that takes all of us.
All of us.
All of us.
Yes.
Taxes aren't going to be lower.
No.
All these things, like there's a willpower by all of us to get involved.
I don't think it necessarily will take more taxes. I think it just takes a rejig of the system.
Mm-hmm. And when you say money, you need to throw people at a people situation. You can't throw money at a...
No.
Right.
I mean, it's obviously part of the equation.
So we've more than scratched the surface, but we know there's a lot more to it. But I like the way we wrapped it up, and that there is hope for a focused effort to deal with the issue in a pragmatic way that's actually helpful and not just moving people around from different places. Maybe we'll have another podcast interview. I like the way this started, and come at it when we see some strategy in place that might work. Right on. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, thanks for doing the long form stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Like it and share.
I don't feel you're a short form guy.
No. Have I changed, Scott? No, I haven't changed, have I?
We do have some video evidence now that you were left speechless at one point in this, and that's like that's gold.
Well,
that's gold. That's the first time I saw.
No, it's where to start.
Yeah.
I learned a ton. Thank them, Tricia and Anthony. Thanks so much for coming in. And I can't wait to hear the feedback on this from the people who view it and listen to it.
Yes,
because I think Anthony was incredibly passionate about his stance and what he's been doing. But I want to hear if anybody calls bullshit on him.
Yeah, and that's important to get people a chance to hear him in long form.
Mm-hmm.
He's had all the opportunity to say as much as he could in a strategic and priority kind of way, and let's see if it resonates or people are going to pick it apart.
Yeah. Hey, I want to thank all our sponsors and the people that support the Echo Essentials podcast, but also the Echo Network. There's some incredible shows on the network that I hope you can download, view, or listen to, which includes North Bay with Love, Backroads Bill, Cheap Seats, and of course, Small Town Times with our very own Dave Dale. We're going to continue to grow this network and allow the community voices to be echoed through our network. Please like and subscribe to what you see and hear here, and also sign up for our newsletter, because Dave has to leave this studio right now to get back to the newsletter. And you simply go to northbayecho.ca and you can sign up right there for the newsletter. It'll be in your inbox twice a week, every week. Dave never misses a date. He's late from time to time. This is the one thing you hate, right? It's the bane of your existence, ever being late.
Deadlines.
I know.
Deadlines.
You're like,
are real.
You say, I think it might be late today. It's like, I'm like, oh well. And you're like, no, I can't miss a deadline.
You got to honor the deadline,
Honor
or
the
or the deadline will beat you up.
Thanks for joining us. This is the Echo Essentials podcast.
I'm Dave Dale.
And I'm Scott Clark. Have a great week.